Hey guys, my name's Greg. Welcome to 3G's Garage. This is kind of our first video of this type, hopefully first of many. We do a ton of work on old snowmobiles and dirt bikes and cars and all kinds of stuff. So if you're into that, stay tuned. This round we're going to be working on a 1978 Yamaha Enticer 340. This sled has been sitting for a long time. The remnants of a registration sticker there are from '92. We have no way to really verify how long the thing's been sitting. When we got it a year ago or so, it's just been sitting around. The motor was locked up on it. We got that freed up and it's been free since. So it's time though. We're going to be taking this sled from the condition that it's in, from sitting for, I don't know, 10 plus years for sure. And what we're going to do with it is we're going to go through the whole thing mechanically and get it into shape for some lake cross racing. So we're going to stud the track. We're going to take that off, obviously get the thing running, and pretty much run the gamut of almost everything on it mechanically, minus an engine rebuild. We're just going to stick with what we have there and hope for the best. So yeah, we're going to get started. So first order of business is to get this suspension skid out from underneath and get the track off of the thing, and then maybe we'll get it on our lift table over there and start going through some of the stuff under the hood. So
we'll start by taking the hood off because there is no hood strap, and knowing our lucks, it would flip open on accident and probably break. So we're going to get that out of the way to start. Yeah. Great. Now that we got the hood off, you can better see the power plant that we are working with. Good old reliable Yamaha 340. Also on the to-do list is delete the oil injection. Primary and secondary clutching, obviously. This secondary looks like she's in pretty rough shape. It's also missing a carb, so we'll have to find one of those. Yeah, we'll set you back down. And then get working on this skid. So rebuilding the skid is probably one of the most important things you can do. Especially making sure all your bearings in the drive wheels and your slides, track clips, all that stuff has to be in good shape. It's best to have less resistance on the track and all that stuff. So you got 3 bolts on either side, usually you got one towards the front, connected to the drive. And then these enticers, you've got a bracket here on the rear with 2 of them. Yeah. That's pretty much exclusive to the enticers, is these rear ones.
this one is more it holds a shaft for the front suspension components.
I'm gonna drop that down. Yeah, you should see the whole sled drop there. That's how you know she's all good and disconnected, ready to be pulled out. Make sure I get all my hardware here. So now we'll get this raised up and pull the skid out, and then we can assess what kind of parts we're going to need to get that back in usable order. So we'll get to that now. So in this situation, it also helps to have a forklift on hand.
But you don't need one. We did this for years without the forklift. We had an anchor point in our old shop or whatever up above, and then we just used a ratchet strap. You know, you just want to be able to get the skid up off the ground. One thing that we didn't do, which we probably should have, is to loosen the tension on the track. And by running the rear wheels forward, that makes it easier to get the suspension skid out from underneath. You can do it this way, and we will do it this way because we didn't do that, but we still could do it, but we'll get it out of there. So.
It got really windy now, and it's really big,
Great.
even though it's raining.
Have this cart off underneath.
There you see. Helps to have two guys, but you can have one guy lifting the track up, help free it up. Help get the track out of the way, and then just pull it out one side, give it a little jiggle jaggle. You also want to make sure you keep these. Make sure these are in good shape. These go on the end of your
Right at the end of your shaft.
yeah, right on the end of your shaft on the skid. Want to make sure those are in
shaft cap.
So bring it in close.
A little rundown the old skid.
Let's assess the damage here. What we're working with for what we need to replace and whatnot. The easiest thing to look at is your slides. These seem to be in decent shape, honestly.
You should look at it from the side profile. You can see the thickness here is kind of what you're looking at, and these actually do look like they're pretty good. Every sled's got their own wear point. These Enticers, you can see how it narrows out just a little bit, like right in here. So there is some wear there, but it's really not too bad.
Why don't you check the bearings on those wheels here?
I mean, for trail riding, these would probably be just fine. But we have the bearings, and so we will replace on those. I believe we're missing some wheels, though.
Yeah, we are. So I feel like that's a pretty common thing. I feel like these missing wheels here in the center are a pretty common thing on these Enticers.
Yeah, so like right on these two little stubs here, you should have wheels this size on there. And we have some extra skids downstairs that we'll grab. I'm pretty sure the shock is probably blown out. And in all honesty, these are so expensive that we usually just run them with bad shocks, and we probably will run this. This sled too is going to be a lake cross sled. We're going to stud the track and stuff, so really it's not going to be running over a ton of bumps. It'll be hitting some bumps, and Keegan's a young guy, so you know, his back can tolerate that stuff yet. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna flashlight. I don't know why I'm bringing the camera with me. A flashlight somewhere.
There's nothing left of that shock.
So while you have the skid out, and
These are getting close to...
makes it easier to look at here, these clips here that run along the edge of your track and keep your skid in line, these guys here, right there, that's what you want to be looking at. It's important that you have all of those, or every other. I think every other is how they come.
Otherwise your track will wander around.
Yeah. So this guy actually looks to be in very good condition as far as clips go. Track is a little chewed up on the outside, but not bad. I've seen a lot worse. It'll work great with some studs in it. You can also look at your tunnel, see if there's any damage. Chassis still looks straight, so we'll carry on. Tearing away. Alright, now that the skid is out, got it up on the lift table, make it easier on ourselves to start tearing into this guy a little bit more.
So a few things that we got to do underneath here for sure. For our racing purposes, we usually get rid of the oil injection. Your tank is here. If you follow this line down, your pump is right there. It's behind your clutch. So we won't be using this stock Yamaha clutch, primary clutch. We'll probably be using a Comet 102 that we have on one of the other sleds. So we'll go ahead and get rid of the tank. We'll take the exhaust off. Let's just go to it. Take the exhaust off first. So your exhaust on these guys is held on by a couple springs here. On the Enticers is a bolt over there. And then there's usually a spring that goes over the top of this section here, but that's gone. So that's one less thing we gotta do. So oil injection delete for us, that means like we can have good control over the amount of oil that we're burning. Sometimes these guys have a tendency to kind of load up at idle because they're over oiling, which isn't a bad thing for trail riding and stuff. It makes the responsiveness off the starting line a little lagging, and you know, if you got a steady mix right in the gas tank, it's easier to control that way. But so we'll pop those two springs off. I don't think those are really factory per se. That one's kind of stuck on. Keep those bushings that go in there and all that. Whoa! Shit. We have to probably burn that out. Actually, if you actually have a fire going, we can just take it outside and throw it in. Do that, or we're gonna have to have a separate fire. So we actually were burning some old stuff outside right now, so there might be enough hot coals out there for us. We just discovered that when we were picking the exhaust out of there, that there was a ton of sunflower seeds. So there was some mice in there. So he's gonna go throw it in the fire. If you get those exhausts nice and hot down in the hot coals, they will, you know, you can burn them out good and get any crap or, you know, whatever was in there out of there, because we don't want that. You certainly don't want the thing starting on fire when you're riding. So leaves and make sure we save.
Just start pulling the tank off.
Sure. Whatever you want.
How crusted is this oil? It looked pretty watery. What do we got?
What else this will do here is, you know, it doesn't seem like much, but getting rid of the tank, what I usually do is I modify this bracket afterwards. It gives you better access to the fuel pump down there, and it just cleans this whole engine bay up a lot. So that helps.
Get a vacuum cap ready. Cap that off.
So what we usually do here is we throw a vacuum cap over the outlet of the tank. We're probably gonna need pliers.
No, it's coming off. You want to pick up the camera again?
Yeah, catch the spillage or what?
I don't know. Yeah, that cap should work.
That looks kind of small.
We got
The next size
longer one.
That one right there.
massive
Who
vacuum
cares? It
cap.
just needs to go over the top of the.
Catch the oil spill.
Yeah, we'll catch the. Oh, we worked well under pressure.
Doesn't smell like clots. She wasn't a high performance unit.
It's not the clots that we were hoping it was. So.
Get that out of there. I mean, that's like full. That's
Yeah.
a couple pounds right there.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. You're carrying extra weight. There's a lot of reasons.
Aside from weight.
Yeah. So there's a separate cable that runs to the carburetor that controls the oil pump. Actually, the oil injection on these little old Yamahas is like really good, bulletproof. I would never remove it for trail riding, but for racing, you got a second cable and it makes the throttle pull a lot harder, and you know, it's just nice to not have it on there. So we take it off. So
What's next? Oh, you gotta get the clutch off.
the clutch can come off, and that's kind of a process because on the Enticers, they don't, there's no hole in the belly pan. So what I usually do, because most of the time we're building race sleds, is I drill a hole in the belly pan and then I can fish a socket straight through, which is probably what I'll do now. So, and we'll make sure we get a decent shot of the clutch removal, because that can usually give people a hard time. Just gonna take my drill. If you don't mind desecrating your belly pan a little bit, I got a stepper bit on the end of it. I'm gonna eyeball it and do my best. The bumper is usually kind of right in the way there, so I usually drill these holes and I kind of just hope for the best. So get her lined up as good as I can. Make some noise. Try not to have it walk on me. Big enough.
Yep.
A little bit off center, but that'll do the trick. So your clutch bolt on your old Yamahas is 22 millimeter. Zip that out. You wanna pick that up? Yeah. Zip that guy back. And then I'll grab the puller. It's the shorter one, I think. So I've had this forever. I don't know what I paid for it, 30 bucks or something like that, but it's come in really handy over the years. It's a specially designed puller for the clutch. So how it works is your clutch bolt here is threaded on the end, and that threads into the end of a tapered crankshaft. So the inside part of the clutch is tapered as well. So this goes on and pushes against the end of it and shoves it on the taper. So you run that out, and then you put this in. So it's, you notice this is threaded on the outside part. So is the clutch. So this just acts as a ram. So you slide that in and you thread it in. That's just going to be pushing against the end of the crankshaft. It's going to grab the thread out here and pull this clutch off. And a lot of times they're really tight, so
Yeah, if you get one that's been sitting out in a field for a long time, it'll just be rusted solid. So
hopefully every time we do this, it's always a hope that you get it where it's a little off center there. Just gonna get that. bit. So I'll hammer it in there with the impact, and you should see it, depending on how stuck this is, you should see it just pop off, and then that's, all you're trying to do is just pop it off that tapered end. That one went nice and easy. We've had to fight and fight and fight with some of them. And so another method that you can use to get the clutches off if you don't have this puller is what you end up, if I didn't have a puller and I wanted to get this clutch off, I need a bolt with the threads, the same pitch threads out on the end. And what you can do is you tip the sled up on its side, you fill the void with water, because water won't compress. So you fill the void and you take your bolt, you put Teflon tape on there, a lot of it, and ram it in with your impact. And it'll act the same way. It'll use that water, will be used just the same as the shaft of this puller. So the puller's a lot easier, a lot cleaner. You don't have to mess with moving the sled around too much, and so just work our.
Here's our factory clutch.
Here's our factory clutch. Sounds pretty good. This old sled doesn't have an odometer on it, so we don't know how many miles are actually on the sled.
After you remove that clutch, that gives you access to your oil pump.
Yeah, so the thing with these old Yamahas is they have the same taper clutch as a lot of other sleds like Polaris Indies, and a very common taper on the crankshaft. So you can fit just about any clutch on them that you want, not just about any, but a lot of them. But if you want to run your oil injection, you have to have one with a gear on the back of it. So this is obviously a factory Yamaha clutch, and it's got this ring gear back here, and when you slide that in, that jives with the teeth on this oil pump, this unit right here.
Probably too dark to see that,
Right.
but there's a gear on the inside.
So without this gear on the back of the clutch, your oil pump won't spin, and you could risk seizing your engine. So, you know, if you're working on your old sled or whatever, and you have a clutch and you put it on there and you think, oh great, it fits, it'll work, just be aware that you need this gear back there.
So now that we got our factory Yamaha clutch off, like I said, that gives us access to the oil pump. And we'll go ahead and remove that next. So you got 4 10mm bolts holding this cover, this oil pump on. Check that out. Parts of what used to be the carburetor.
Huh.
So usually on these old Yamahas, or I guess any old sled, you can get a lot of leaves or water or any contaminant that collects under the engine, and that oftentimes that'll just eat the whole belly of the snowmobile. And this one actually looks like it has most of the belly pan intact, aside from what looks to be a small mouse nest.
Get it behind there a little bit.
So there's
Talk to the intake under there, if you can see that.
Oh yeah, give me a flashlight, the blue one right there. So
That's how it works with the two
yeah,
lines.
so now that we got our oil pump off, as well as the oil tank, another big thing that comes along with removing your oil injection is making sure that you cap or RTV these lines for the intake. So your oil pumps up through here and goes directly into the intake through these little ports on either side of the intake. So if you don't plug those up and you just pull the hoses off, you'll be sucking air in through there and you'll be running lean. So it's always important to make sure you take care of those when you're doing the oil injection delete.
It's very, very critical, because if you run it lean that way, it's gonna melt. I mean, it'll be, first of all, you probably have a hard time getting it to run right when it's like that. But if you do, and it might run wide open, but it won't run long. It'll lean out and burn. So yeah, so we'll cut those, and then we'll make sure we cap that off before we get too far. But
So at the beginning of this video, I told you that we'd be cleaning up our clutches, or our clutch faces, new springs and such. So when these sleds sit, they build up some corrosion on these clutch faces. And you do not want that when you're, yeah. So you don't want that because it'll really tear into your belt. You know, you got these rough surfaces. You can see all the corrosion in there. So Scotch-Brite pad and an hour or two of sanding will take care of that. Usually you'll get it on your brake caliper or your brake disc here. This one actually doesn't look that bad. So, yeah. I didn't even say that. I'm draining this right now.
Keegan's gonna go ahead and drain the chain case, and we'll get started on removing that secondary. And then I'm gonna be taking our fuel pump bracket off. I'll show that in a minute.
So on the Enticers, unfortunately your secondary and your chain case are one unit. So whenever you go to clean your secondary, you also have to drain your chain case and take that all apart. But it's always good when you're reviving a sled to drain the chain case and fill it up with some fresh fluid. Where's that bucket that you sawed in half?
I think all that's in the same thing up in front garage. All those buckets. So, if you remember, the oil pump or the oil injection tank was right here. This bracket here is way overbuilt, like most of the sled, honestly. But it just gets in your way anytime you're, trying to do anything in this area. Your fuel pump is under here, so routing of your pulse line is back here. It goes to the fuel pump. What I like to do is I take these brackets off and then I cut the top part of it off, and that way I can have access to the fuel pump very easily without any issues. So that's what I'm working on now. It's just held on by 2 bolts. Also, if you can see underneath here, down there is your drive axle, and there's a bearing in there that rarely gets enough attention to ever get changed out. So we for sure are going to look at that and make sure it's in good shape, and if it's not, we're going to change it out. So getting rid of this bracket is really good for that. Just opens things up again, makes it easier to work on.
Oh man.
What, she got oil in it? Oh wow,
Looks nice. I can't grab. I'm plugging a hole with my finger here. It's stinky, but.
Your oil stinks usually.
So as I was saying before, it's always good practice to change out your chain case fluid whenever you're digging into a sled that's been sitting for a while. Usually the fluid will look a lot worse than this. This stuff looks like, it's not been sitting for as long as we thought. So
It might have been sitting, but at least it had been maintained.
yeah.
So that's a good thing. When you got fresh fluid in there, that gear oil will stay, it'll look good for a lot of years. Yeah, if it looks nice and whatever, at least that gives you an indication that the previous owner took care of the sled a little bit, which is good.
So I'm gonna get this mess taken care of, and then we'll start pulling that secondary off.
All right, so here's that fuel pump bracket I was talking about. I'm just gonna go ahead and take the death wheel, make a couple cuts here, and trim this thing up so it's not so bulky and getting in the way all the time. I'm just going to go ahead and use the file, take all the rough edges off of it, or best I can, so you don't reach in there and cut yourself. And then that's pretty much it. I'll show you the final project here when we're reinstalling it.
So now that I've got the chain case all drained, one step you do before you take apart, or you basically tear your brakes off, you want to take off the nut for your drive axle.
Yeah, because you want to be able to use your brakes to hold the. I mean, you can find a way to get that nut off of there without, but it makes it a lot easier if you can hold the drive axle from moving, so you can remove the nut with the brakes. So we're gonna go ahead and get to that. So there's just three 12mm bolts holding this bearing retainer on the outside, and then I'll figure out what size that axle nut is.
And like he said before, the bearing that is in here, and it feels pretty crunchy. The bearing that is in there is very important that it is in good operating condition, because all your it's what's driving your track, so you want to have that bearing in good condition and operating properly. So we'll go and hold the brake for him while he gets that nut off.
The axle nut's a 27mm on the Enticer, so throw that on there. They're usually pretty tight, so I like to use a little persuasion. There's no way to get an impact gun in there, so, well, not the one I have. I don't have a low profile one, so. So I can just ratchet that over.
And now that he has the drive nut off, then now it is time to start disassembling all this, getting that ready to be cleaned up. So we'll set you back down.
Here's your bearing that we're after, and in all honesty, I mean, it's really crunchy. And most people, when they pick up an old sled like this, they'll just get the motor running and hit the trails or hit the field or whatever. But I mean, this was not going to last. I mean, it barely turns, but I don't know if you can hear that. It's in terrible shape. So that would have failed right away. Not only would it have failed, it's also a lot of rolling resistance too. So, you know.
So when you're disassembling a chain case, it's very important that you remember the orientation of the spacers and washers. I've fallen victim to not remembering numerous times. I think you have too. So just, you know, stack things how they came off, or take a picture, or sometimes, or I think you can still find diagrams for this stuff, but you know, make it easy on yourself and take things off as they came out.
So we just need to be back off.
Yep.
I'd really like to take a look at those gears and see what they are.
Shooter.
I like the sound of that.
So, with your top gear and your bottom gear, usually they'll be numbered. You can find a number usually on the back faces. Tells you how many teeth you have on each. No number on those?
No.
So when you're taking the your chain and gears out, just remember to loosen up your tensioner. I'll pull out too. And then while you're in here, you got the cover off and your gears out, you know, the whole thing disassembled. Just hit it with some brake clean or a cloth and, you know, clean all that gunk out of there that's been sitting in there for so long. Just get it nice and freshened up so that, you know, you don't have to do it again the next time or worry about a bearing failing. Just, you know, something along those lines.
Otherwise, everything in the Chaincase looked good. The rest of this stuff.
I bet you that bearing is pretty good. So, the top and bottom spacer.
That was the rag that I had over here.
So you've got that, you know, that 12 lock nut, and then you have your 10 for your adjuster. You want to run that all the way in so that you can pull your cable through right there, and then disconnect your brake cable from your brakes on your secondary. So, you know, with greasy fingers, this goes a lot slower than it probably should, but, you know, run this all the way in. It's not.
Yeah, so the jam nut needs to get moved back. Yeah, all of the stuff in your clutch area has a tendency to build up with just a cake of grease and stuff because your belt sheds, you know, as you use your belt, it sheds little pieces of itself everywhere, and the grease, everything sticks, so you have this like kind of a rubber goo on everything. I can't get it any farther by hand.
Still not wanting to. Oh, there it is.
You got it.
So you can see you compress these arms together by hand, and then your cable should pop up out of that little hole there, and then
And you just run it back out. You thread it all the way back out.
why is that locked in there now?
You can also tell by the amount of grease and stuff here. This is your brake rotor. I mean, it's greasy. So these old machines with cable brakes, I mean, they're not that efficient anyways, but when you have grease on your brake rotor, you can't stop like that. So obviously all of this stuff needs to get thoroughly cleaned up before we take it out on the track. So.
Of course. Last little bit, she's getting stuck.
I'll put that.
Right there.
All right.
So now you got all of your outer components and accessories, whatever, disconnected from your secondary. You have 4 12mm nuts, 2 on each side, that you need to take off, and then the whole unit itself, secondary and chain case, should slide off.
So unfortunately on the Enticer setup where you have this thing is all one unit, it's almost impossible. I think we've done it before somehow, but it's almost impossible to get your secondary clutch off without removing the chain case. So it's just easier to take the whole chain case off and deal with it that way.
Especially since we're freshening everything up, it's best if we just take the whole thing. So we got all those nuts undone. You can see that this thing will just wiggle its way off. There it is. Here's our chain case secondary combo. And then now that you got this off and the nut off on the other side, your drive axle should come out, and then you can also pull your track out.
So like Keegan said, that's where the chain case and secondary was, and there's our track drive. So now there's nothing holding it on. We took the bearing off and the retainer on the other side and the chain case from this side, so we'll be able to reach up underneath there and kind of finagle it out. This can be kind of difficult sometimes, depending, because you know the design of it is to run in the track, so you got to lift the track off of it and finagle it out of there. So we'll try to put you guys in a spot where you can see a little bit, and
Set it back here on this.
you're not gonna be able to see up under there then. And there's oil all over the place over here. So.
What do you lift the track?
Just flip it out one way and pull it out the other way.
Oh, here it is.
And now we can take our track out of there too.
Get you out of the way. Whoa, watch out for the... Here it is. So you got, usually you'll have a Phillips on each side. Obviously this seat is not factory, it's bright orange and it's ugly, so we're gonna get rid of that. I actually picked up a Yamaha Viper seat for this, which will be going on here.
From a much newer sled.
Yeah, from a much newer sled, late 90s. And so you got, you know, bolt on each side in the front, and then you'll have two in the rear. Take care of those and get the seat off.
Two in the rear.
Two in the rear. I don't know what is that.
I'm gonna take this shrouding off over the gas tank here. There's actually a fuel filter in the tank that oftentimes goes unlooked at. We usually go in there and replace on those guys, so I'm gonna do that.
And I already stuck my nose in there by the gas tank, and it smells old, so.
Putrid.
Where do you have the middle, the 3/8 ratchet?
Probably just sitting there somewhere. Sitting right there.
Just settle down. Let me get these seat bolts off. I feel like
What? Everything's rusty.
yeah, that's the right way.
Spray it with some penetrant.
Oh, this one is loose. Work on this one. Oh. The big ugly orange seat is off the sled. I'll show you the seat that will be going on there. Much newer model. Yamaha Viper seat. Found that on Facebook Marketplace. These seats are, I mean, if you're,
High demand.
they're in high demand, but if you don't feel like, you know, restoring a old seat and seat pan and whatever, that is the go-to for these old Yamahas, especially the Exciters, and haven't put one on an Enticer yet, but I've seen it done before.
Set it on there for a size reference. See how
You can see this Exciter up here has one as well, and they work great. Yeah, that should. Obviously, the fit and finish isn't going to be the same as a factory seat, but you know, it'll work for what we're doing. You know, it's not a show sled; it's a race sled.
And the nice thing about it is it kind of wraps and wraps around the tunnel a little bit. So when you're leaning over, when you're racing and stuff, it doesn't, the edges of the tunnel don't dig into your leg or whatever. And whatever, they work well. So, all right. So I think that's where we're gonna end it for this one, guys. This will be a multi-part video. I think we made some good headway today. Got her pretty much torn down to where we want to start kind of going through everything and building the sled back up the way we want it. So yeah, I mean, by no means are we experts, so you know, if you see things or if you have questions, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We'd be you know, really appreciate that. So we'll catch you in the next one.